Sacred Sites with Steve Ray. Here on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and welcome to Sacred Sites with Steve Ray, where we explore the holy and historical significance of sacred sites around the globe every Monday. And our guide, well, Steve Ray. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Keith. Always good to be with you, and God bless America. It's a great day today. The next 4 weeks, we're going to go to Ephesus. This is a city that is very prominent in the New Testament, and January 1st was the solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God, and that's what we're going to go find out where that happened, where that was declared. And by the way, I have a documentary movie I made, all of this filmed on location about Mary, and we go to this place. It's called Mary, Mother of God. So Mary spent the later part of her life in Ephesus, and a lot of people don't realize that. And her house was located up on Nightingale Mountain, which is 10 miles outside of Ephesus, up on the side of the mountain. And because she was there, the Council Fathers in 431, the Third Ecumenical Council of the Catholic Church, declared her to be Mary, the Mother of God. That's where that declaration came in 431. So let's go on our journey now that we got the introduction there. It all starts, the end of Mary's life all starts at the cross, at the foot of Calvary, where Jesus is dying. And because Mary had no other sons, Jesus said, "John, I want you to take care of Mom. Mom, you're going to move in and live with John in her house, in his house." Well, John ended up moving to Ephesus to become the bishop there. And so Mary would have traveled with John to Ephesus. Of course, she came back, and that's where the Assumption took place in Jerusalem. But she went by either land or sea to Ephesus. And that's a long way. I mean, when I do these travels, I get on a nice jet airline, food and wine, air conditioning, and I land in a few hours. Mary and John, if they went by land from Jerusalem to Ephesus, it would have been 1,200 miles of walking. And that is, there's 250,000 miles of primary roads that Rome built, but that would have been 1,200 miles of walking, 20 miles a day. You do the math. If they went by sea, it would have been a much shorter trip, maybe 10 days to 2 weeks. But it was rough because they did not have cruise ships. They would have had to rent space on the deck, and they would have lived on the deck. Now, ask yourself, where do you go to the toilet when you're on the deck of a ship that has no toilets? You sit on the side of the ship and you go into the sea. Mary was a tough Jewish girl, and I don't mind telling you about the real life of her. We see her always so, unwrinkled, but the real life, Mary was a tough Jewish woman. And so whether it was by land or sea, it was a rugged trip. Remember, travel by sea was dangerous. Paul had 4 shipwrecks. And if you don't think life is dangerous, I've been on many cruises. We lead cruises. I've never been on a shipwreck yet because it's much safer today. Back in those days, Paul himself alone suffered 4 shipwrecks. So Mary and John arrive in Ephesus. Where is that? Well, she's far away from home, from her little hamlet in Nazareth or the fishing village of Capernaum. She's now in one of the major cities of the Roman Empire. 250,000 people lived there. It was the home of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Artemis. She was a god. It was the capital of Asia at the time, which is in Turkey of today, and 250,000 people. It was the hub of a lot of commerce. It was the source of merchants coming in and out. It was a seaport. It had, when she walked in, she would have seen Roman togas, bustling streets, glorious buildings, public toilets, by the way, with no partitions or doors. Celsius Library, brothels were there. 24,000 seat theater, pagan temples, idols, and gods. So what John did is he built her a house up on the side of the mountain away from the pagan city. So there was a temple of Artemis. And if you want to read about this, go to Acts 19. It's mentioned 5 times. One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and it was dedicated to Artemis, who supposedly her great relic, her stone, fell down from the sky, and they built a temple around it. And Paul got in a big fight there, and he ended up getting kicked out of Ephesus over this because he said that Artemis was not a god, and therefore all the people that were making the statues of Artemis got all upset, and they tried to get rid of Paul. It's a whole great story to read. I read it to everybody in the 24,000 seat theater when I'm there with my group. Say I'll sit up there and I read Acts 19 to them where it happened on site. So Artemis was called God the Mother. Mary now enters Ephesus, and she's the mother of God. Very different. So now what is Mary's house? Well, when we arrive, we go on a bus up the hill, up the Nightingale Mountain, 10 miles up out of the site. And it was discovered, or it was Blessed Anne Catherine Emmerich, who is a mystic, a German mystic, had a vision of this. And she went and told these monks. They went and they discovered it exactly like she said it would be. They went up the side of Nightingale Mountain. They dug down in this where she said, and there was the foundations of a house in a cruciform shape. And they reconstructed it. And from that point on, people have been visiting there as the House of Mary. It's really quite an amazing place. I've been there many, many times. We did filming there. If you want to see it, it's in our movie too. And there's at least 10 books that I have in my library alone verifying and giving information about the history of this house as Mary's house, how John and Mary lived there, how it was discovered, and so on. And if people think it's not an important site, it has received apostolic blessings, and 3 of the most recent popes have visited this site. Pope VI, John Paul II, and Benedict XVI have all visited the site of Mary's house and venerated it and celebrated Mass there. So we were just there last October, and we had 3 buses, believe it or not, folks. And we went to Mary, and when you go, you drive past the old city of Ephesus, by the way. We drive by, we could see the theater on the side, but we go past and around the ancient city of Ephesus, and we go up the side of the mountain. And as we go up, there's this beautiful bronze statue of Mary standing there. You know, you don't expect to see that in Turkey, because Turkey is 99.9% Muslim. There's only at the most 60, 70,000 Christians in the whole country of 9 million people. It is all Muslim. But when you come there, it's owned by the Franciscans, and they have a beautiful statue of Mary, and you'd be amazed how many Muslims are there to honor Mary and to visit her house. Almost sometimes as many Muslims as there are Christians there to see Mary's house. So Mary, John builds this house for her away from the wicked city, because Ephesus, but back in those times, they were very I don't want to get into too many details, but it was a very sexually oriented, wicked city. And that's why Paul goes there and he turns it upside down and calls people out to follow Jesus Christ. That's like much ways like our modern world today. You know, when you call somebody out of the pagan world of today to become a Christian, you're asking them to live in a very, very different way and to be countercultural. So our bus stops at Mary's house, and there's shops along the way. We walk all the way down the road, and we come to Mary's house, which is no bigger than maybe a 3-car garage. And it's all built of stone, and everybody goes in, and it's beautiful inside. And I'll tell you what, Keith, it's hard to get my group back on the bus after this. Everybody wants to stay there because it's such a peaceful, beautiful place. It's hard to get them back on the bus, but we always have Mass there. There's a covered Mass site outside. We fill the whole place. Right where the popes have celebrated Mass, we celebrate Mass there. And all the readings are not the readings of the day. They are about Mary. So the readings are all about Mary, and we honor her and celebrate her. And it's interesting to see all the Muslims. They always want to stop and watch us because they don't have a worship service like we Christians do. Ours is gorgeous and glorious and beautiful. And they just sit there with their eyes wide open watching us and seeing what we're doing. So we have Mass there. And then when we leave the Mass, we go down and there's a prayer wall. We light candles to ask God to pray for us. People around the world, other than that, write things out on a piece of paper, or they take a piece of cloth. And I sent you a picture of this wall with all these pieces of cloth woven into this net, and the whole wall is covered with these fragments of cloth. Each one of those is an intention, a prayer request that they've come down. And there's also a spring where people get water from the same place Mary got water, and there's been miracles associated with that water. So now I only have a minute left. So I want to go beyond that. Now we're leaving Mary's house. We go back to the ancient city of Ephesus. We walk through that city. It takes us 2 hours to walk through that ancient city. It was huge. Imagine 250,000 people live there. And the excavations, only a small part of them have been excavated, but even the small part is stunningly magnificent. But we go beyond that all the way out through a field. Nobody else goes there. I take my groups there, but nobody else even knows it's there. And it's ruins of an ancient church called the Church of the Virgin Mary. And that's where the Third Ecumenical Council of the Catholic Church took place. In the Church of Mary, it was named that way because the fathers knew Mary had been there. And a man named Nestorius, an archbishop, said that Mary was only the mother of Jesus, not the mother of God, only the mother of the man Jesus. But the Pope sent he sent another man along. I'll get his name here in just a second. And he was Cyril of Alexandria. Sorry about that. I had a brain freeze there. Cyril of Alexandria came representing Orthodoxy, and he said, no, Mary is the mother of Jesus, yes, but because he's a divine person and she gave birth to him, she's also Mary, the mother of God. And if you cannot say Mary is the mother of God, you are a heretic. And that became a litmus test for whether you were a heretic or Orthodox. If you could say Mary, the mother of God. That took place in Ephesus, and that's where the pronouncement Mary, mother of God took place, and we're done.
Wow, incredible. I didn't realize how long of a trip it was from Jerusalem to Ephesus. 1,200 miles. That's, wow. You weren't kidding when you say Mary was a tough Jewish woman. Incredible.